Have you ever received a phone call from an unknown number or even a phone call that matches your area code? You think to yourself, do we accept the phone call or do we deny the phone call? Or even think to ourselves, are we planning on receiving any phone calls today? If the answer is no, odds are you're a victim of phone scamming. Now, when we talk about phone scamming today, we'll talk about a few different types of phone scamming calls you may receive, how to recognize these type of phone calls, and how to avoid and report these type of phone calls. Now, the different types of phone calls that you can receive, we'll start off with robophone calls. Now, these robophone calls are phone calls that are pre-recorded messages that state maybe they're from a legitimate business, such as a bank, or even maybe the IRS, asking you for large sums of money and personal information. Another type of phone call you can receive is a neighbor spoofing call. A neighbor spoofing call is a phone call that comes across as an area code that matches yours, or even a phone call that is from a legitimate business. Now, these phone scammers got smart and they used a program to falsify phone numbers, to trick you into picking up the phone, to making you think that it's a phone number you recognize. Now that we know the different types of phone calls we can receive, how do we recognize these phone calls? Now, as stated before with neighbor spoofing, you can recognize these type of scam phone calls by not recognizing the area code. So if you don't know the caller, that's your number one. Now, number two, you pick up the phone and it's a pre-recorded message right off the bat. That may be a phone scam phone call. Now, in 2018, Consumer Sentinel Network data reported that over 2 million people have received and reported calls of fraud and identity theft, or were victims of fraud and identity theft. And number 4 on this list of reportings was from fraud and identity thefts coming from cell phone and phone calls. Now that we can recognize these different type of phone calls, how do we avoid these type of phone calls? Now, the number one way you can avoid these phone calls is by not answering them. Let them go straight to voicemail. If you simply do not recognize the phone number or are not expecting a phone call from anyone that day, just decline the phone call, let it go straight to voicemail. Odds are the person will call back if it's important enough, or leave an important message for you to review later. Next, if you happen to answer this phone call by mistake, simply hang up and block the number. Simple as that. Now, another way we can avoid these phone calls is by getting on a national do not call list, but the national do not call list is generally to screen phone calls from businesses trying to sell you things and telemarket. Now, you can report different types of phone scamming phone calls that you might have received, or you think that's a suspicious phone call, by reporting it to FTC, FCC, or even local law enforcement. As we do know, these type of different phone calls are illegal, or some of these phone calls that you receive can be illegal. Now that we've went over the type of phone call you can receive, how to recognize these phone calls, and how to avoid these phone calls, just simply don't answer the phone calls. Don't give out personal information. Most businesses state, such as banks, they will not ask you for personal information over the phone. They contact through the mail first, as I do know the IRS does this. So if you do receive a phone call saying that somebody's from the IRS, they contact you by mail first. Then if they need to make a phone call, they do. But even then, be wary of odd phone calls that come through. So today we learned the importance of being vigilant towards unsolicited phone calls. And my message to you is practice safe phone answering, and remember, if you do not answer the phone call, you will not be victim to scam.